world order is being rearranged right now, right before our eyes, and Washington, D.C. is desperately trying to hold on to power. Something very big is about to happen, and we better be paying attention to it. And there are like 5 huge news developments that we need to cover today, which have massive implications for Western powers. And I'm going to show you something also that's very, very strange that NATO just did, which no mainstream media are covering right now, and it's very concerning. But first, let's start with something that's coming to the Western Hemisphere. On Friday, Russian President Putin started sending a massive armada of battleships headed right for Cuba, right off of Florida's coast.
Several Russian warships are on their way to Cuba this morning. That happened back in the 1960s, the Cuban Missile Crisis. It was just a little thing. Comes days after a warning from Vladimir Putin that Russia could provide weapons to actors that would then attack Western targets over those countries' support of Ukraine.
Early this coming week, if you're standing in Key West, Florida, using your binoculars, you will likely see something that looks like this. Yes, Russian warships performing massive military training exercises, docking in Havana Harbor, right in our backyard. How the hell did this happen? Incompetence, failure on the part of America's leadership is how it happened, that we are sitting now on the brink of another Cuban Missile Crisis. Yeah, nuclear-powered Russian submarines, destroyers with cruise missiles that can easily attack American cities, and warships that make our Navy ships seem old just by modern standards. Just look at this map.
This is Havana, where the Russian fleet will be docking. And this is Miami, the closest American city. The air distance between Havana and Miami is barely 366 kilometers. Zircon, like we told you, can travel up to 1,000 kilometers, meaning it can strike as far as South Carolina.
You probably haven't seen this on the news in the United States at all because they don't want you to know about it. Just like commenter Denise says right here, what's so crazy here in the United States? None of this is in the news. Yes, Denise, exactly. Exactly, Denise, because they are hiding it. Wait until you see what else they're hiding from you. I'm going to show you. This week, President Biden flew to Normandy to honor our D-Day veterans and basically plagiarized Ronald Reagan's D-Day speech from the same location at Pointe du Hoc. While he was there, he reiterated his love of Ukraine and told Zelensky that don't worry, more U.S. weapons and money are on the way, so they can continue to attack Russia inside of Russia with U.S. weapons. But what no one is telling you is that targets NATO has been selecting to hit inside of Mother Russia. Journalist Brandon Smith uncovered something stunning, and very, very fishy, by the way, which should lead us to believe that NATO is planning for something very big with Russia. NATO struck 2 different radar stations in Russia. So what, you say, who cares? But these aren't just any radar sites. As Brandon Smith writes, Russia's over-the-horizon radar systems have a detection range of at least 6,000 miles. The real range is classified and scans specifically for high-altitude ballistic missiles. They are not designed to detect lower-flying medium-range cruise missiles, or ATACMS, and drones, meaning the 2 stations destroyed by Ukrainian weapons are meant to act as an early warning system for nuclear attack. Very strange. But it gets even stranger. These NATO targets weren't even being used against Ukraine, meaning, 1, they're used to warn against nuclear attacks, which Ukraine doesn't have nuclear weapons, and 2, these are fixed position radars. They don't move. And when they were attacked, they were positioned so they were scanning the southern section of Russia and the south, not scanning Ukraine at all. Here you can see the way they face on this map. Again, they serve no strategic purpose in Ukraine. Unless, of course, it's not about Ukraine at all. And when you understand that, then you start to understand what's about to happen. They are preparing for an all-out war. That's what they're doing. And sources have been saying get ready for terror attacks inside the United States. Yes, terror attacks inside the United States. Now, you remember a few weeks ago, the CIA coordinated and carried out a massive attack inside of Moscow, inside of a Moscow theater. You attacked their civilians inside Moscow. So Russia is ready to return the favor to you at the CIA. And it's going to happen. The FBI director, Chris Wray, told us this week a massive terror attack is coming very soon to the United States. And he said it's going to be very similar to the Moscow theater attack.
But now, increasingly concerning, is the potential for a coordinated attack here in the homeland akin to the ISIS-K attack we saw at the Russia concert hall just a couple weeks ago.
I wonder why he knows that. The West is getting desperate to hold on to power, and it needs an enemy, even if Russia isn't an enemy at all. But they're about to be. This week, for the very first time, Putin labeled the United States an enemy state, an enemy of the country. This is unprecedented, so they've labeled the United States an enemy now, officially. Nowhere is this desperation by the West more apparent than with the US dollar right now. Now, if you have your money in US dollars, God help you. It's under assault. And of course, it's declining faster than President Biden's mental health. That's why Americans are buying up gold, they're buying up Bitcoin as fast as they can. And so are institutions, and so are central banks, by the way. Congressman Thomas Massie was just on Tucker's show this weekend. It was eye-opening. And he was especially pointing out how the United States dollar as a reserve currency is collapsing.
At some point, they're going to quit using our dollars as reserve currency. I mean, I watched your interview with Putin, and one of the things, whether you hate him or not, one of the things he said that is true is when we sanctioned him, before we sanctioned Russia, 70% of their transactions were in US dollars. And after the sanctions, it's less than 20% of their transactions are in US dollars. So what we're doing with all these sanctions, ironically, we're shooting ourselves in the foot every time we sanction a country and say you can't use our currency to have a transaction. We're taking away our ability to charge them 3% for that transaction, because when we print 3% more dollars, we're just taking that money.
And we're also sending a really clear signal, which is the dollar's not safe for you.
Right.
It's the reserve currency because it's a safe haven, because it's a stable country. It's the most stable country in the world, and we're not going to weaponize the dollar because that would be shooting ourselves. But suddenly we are.
China, Russia, and countless other countries are turning away from the United States dollar to settle transactions. Over the past week, we've seen the sharpest decline ever in cross-border payments being settled by United States dollars. And it gets worse. President Biden and Democrats are getting so desperate, in fact, that they're now trying to go after crypto, your digital assets. Last week, President Biden vetoed a bill that Americans in Wall Street wanted. It would have allowed U.S. banks to hold crypto assets and custodian them, just like they do with stocks. But nope, anti-freedom Biden vetoed the bill. They don't want you to hold these types of currencies because it's a threat to them. And President Trump made his position very clear this week.
I will ensure that the future of crypto and the future of Bitcoin will be made in the USA, not driven overseas. I will support the right to self-custody to the nation's 50 million crypto holders. I say this with your vote. I will keep Elizabeth Warren and her goons away from your Bitcoin. And I will never allow the creation of a central bank digital currency.
So the differences right now could not be starker. So that's the news update part of today's video. Now I have to tell you, even though Biden is doing everything possible to try and stop the progress of the fourth industrial revolution, especially when it comes to blockchain and the technology behind it, your ability to make financial transactions that'll help free humanity, help people gain control of their own financial assets and freedom, and stop this government madness, blowing up the dollar, going further into debt and higher inflation.